Good afternoon. Thousands of San Antonio workers may be one step closer to collecting paid sick time.
But certain variables could kill the proposal. Eyewitness News reporter Sue Kalberg with more on what's next.
Motion carries.
A jubilant crowd reacted to the passage of the measure. The vote was 9-2. Those who worked to collect the petition signatures that forced the council to either pass the measure as proposed or put it on the November ballot said the victory is hard fought and sweet.
We make sure that we're more productive at work, that our children are taken care of, and that we all get the health care that we need.
And this is an undue burden for us.
The arguments went on for hours, with many in the business community saying this is bad for business.
This is a free enterprise issue. Let the economics work.
And I just believe in this particular case, we are way out of line.
Several council members are concerned the proposal doesn't align with state law.
The Supreme Court is going to invalidate a San Antonio municipal paid sick leave ordinance. And if they don't do it, the state legislature will do it for us.
Assuming there are no successful challenges at the state or federal level, the measure could take effect January 1st. Sue Kalberg, KENS 5, Eyewitness News.
And the state attorney general has already warned the city that a local ordinance cannot preempt state labor law.